Examination of writing implements writing materials. Writing materials are those that provide surfaces for writing like paper, woods, and the like. There are instances wherein document experts will conclude that the writings on the documents are genuine, but in reality, the document is a fraud. Sometimes the questions are not all about who wrote the writings, or is the writing genuine. Sub- s- Subtitle purgers will try to falsify the writing implements, the instruments and materials, ink and paper. Thus, document expert must have a working knowledge about them. One of the subjects of inquiry in question documents examination is the writing material used. The common probable question on paper it is its age, whether the actual age of the paper corresponds with the alleged date of preparation of the question document. Anachronism. It refers to something wrong in time and in place. This means that the forger has a trouble matching the paper, ink, or writing materials to the exact date it was supposed to have been written. Paper. There are sheets of interlaced fibers, usually cellulose fibers from plants, but sometimes from cloth rags or other fibrous materials that is formed by pulping the fibers and causing to felt or mat to form a solid surface. Historical development. The evolution of writing materials culminated in the development of paper. The oldest written records still surviving are the Sumerian clay tablets dating back from the 4th millennium BC. Papyrus. This came into use about 3500 BC. People of Egypt, Palestine, Syria, and southern Europe used the pit, soft spongy tissue of the stem of the sedge, grass like herb, Papyrus to make writing materials known as papyrus, uh, parchment. Writing material made from the skin of animals, primarily of sheep, calves, or goats, was probably developed in the Middle East, more or less contemporaneously with papyrus. It came into wide use only in the 2nd century BC in the city of Pergamum, Pergamum in the Anatolia. Vellum. Writing materials from fine skins of young calves or kids, and the term name was often used for all kind of parchment manuscript. It became the most important writing materials from bookmaking, while parchment continued for special manuscript. Uh, Development of paper manufacturing. It is widely claimed that invention of paper is generally attributed to a Chinese court official Kaijun Chailun in about AD 105. He is the first to succeed in making paper from vegetable fibers, tree barks, mulberry tree, rags, old speech, nettings. The art of paper making was kept secret for 500 years. The Japanese acquired it in the 7th century AD. In AD 751, the Arab city of Sam Samarkand was attacked by marauding Chinese, and some Chinese taken as prisoners were skilled in paper making and were forced by the city governor to build and operate a paper mill, and Samarkand soon became the paper making center of the Arab world. Knowledge of paper making traveled westward, spreading throughout the Middle East. The Moorish invasion of Spain led to the invasion AD 1150, or erection of the first European paper mill at Atiba province of Valencia. Knowledge of the technology spread quickly, and by 16th century, paper was manufactured throughout most Europe. The first paper mill in England was established in 1495. The first such mill in America in 1690. The first practical machine was made in 1798 by the French inventor Nicolas Louis Robert. The machine reduced the cost of paper. It supplants the hand molding process in paper manufacture. Robert's machine was improved by the British stationers and brothers Henry Pondriner and Silly Pondriner, who in 1830 produced the first of the machines that bear their name. The solution of the problem of making paper from cheap raw material was achieved by the introduction of the ground wood process of pulp making about 1840, and the first of the chemical pulp process approximately 10 years later. Tracing the age of document. The age of the document may be estimated from paper. Four cases were reported by Lucas where the age of the document was established from the composition of the paper. In the one of these cases, a document dated 1213 AD 1798 was found to be written on paper composed entirely of chemical prepared wood cellulose. Considering that is the type of paper was not introduced not until about 60 years later. The document is obviously a fake one. Another famous case in the Lost Hitler diaries, allegedly found by Konrad Kujau on an airplane used by Hitler during World War II. This turned out to be fraud, as revealed by chemical ink analysis, wherein ink used were not present not until 1954. Hitler died in 1945. So obviously that diary is a fraud, for Hitler no longer exists on the time the diary was written. Watermarks. It is a term for a figure or design incorporated into paper during its manufacture and appearing later than the rest of the sheet when viewed in the transmitted light. The earliest way of identifying the date of manufacturing of the paper is the by the watermark, a brand put on the paper by the manufacturer. How watermark is made? The watermark was made when the semi-fluid paper pulp mixture of cotton or other fibers was drained on a grid of lead, wrap and chain, hoop wires, fine wires, forming the desired design were tied on the top of the grid and impressed into the valve. This impression made the paper thinner and therefore more transparent where it appeared. These are impressed on the paper during its manufacture by means of the dandy roll. Origin. Watermarks first appeared on papers produced in Italy around 1270, less than 100 years after the art of papermaking was introduced to Europe by Muslim from the Middle East. Early in 19th century, paper makers began to solder the watermarks wire to the grid frame, thus ensuring uniformity of impression and aiding in the detection of counterfeiting and forgery. The first British postage stamps of 1840 bore a watermark, but a stamp of the United States were not so marked until 1895. When paper began to be machine-made, the watermark wiring was simply transferred to the grid cover of the dandy roll, turning cylinder that pass over the paper. Concept of document age detection through watermarks. Sometimes a limit may be placed to the age of the document by means of watermark. The earliest known dating from 1282. Unfortunately, however, not all papers contain watermarks. Usually, watermarks are requested by their owners, manufacturers, with patient patent office. A present watermark is one of the most reliable means of tracing the age of the paper. However, the question documents examiner's finding is limited only to the approximate date or year of the paper manufacture. In determining the age of the paper by watermarks, it is necessary to ascertain the owner of the watermark in question or its manufacturer in FBI. This is done by checking the reference file of the laboratory. Once the manufacturer is determined, when consideration is given to changes in the design and defects of individual design. In recent years, some large manufacturers have cleverly incorporated in inconspicuous changes in their watermark in order to date their products. Obviously, document is proof if it contains a watermark which was not in existence at the time the document purports to have been executed. In case the watermark did not change, following is applied. Considered any defect in the individual design may furnish a clue as the age of paper. The dandy roll through constant usage will somehow be damaged. This damage is also known as caused by wear and tear, which becomes progressively more and more times goes by damages on the dandy will leave some peculiar markings on the watermarks of the paper manufactured or all papers that will pass through the made through the damaged dandy roll. The investigator carefully determining the distinct markings on the watermark of the paper manufacturer or all papers that will pass through the damaged dandy roll. Discoloration. One way of tracing the age of the paper is through the observance of changes in its physical characteristics, particularly discoloration. Naturally, a paper will discolor after a passage of time due to numerous environmental factors such as moisture, temperature, dust, etc. In case of papers out of wood pulp, they start to discolor at ages from 2 to 3 years, while rag shape quantity papers, they are very old before discoloration starts. Causes of discoloration. Discoloration is highly influenced by storage of the papers or documents and condition like the following. Due to process of oxidation from about by the natural means, brown spot due to mold that are very obvious characteristics both in appearance and distribution. Exposure to dust and dirt. Occasional staining of fruit juice, grease, and may also due to it partial burning, etc. Detailed examination of writing material. Collect standard document from the issuing institution, company, or individual and compare. Consider and physical characteristic of both question and standard documents such as the size, the thickness, the surface, like glossings, opacity, etc. and the general texture of the paper. Check with the issuing institution, company or individual about the dissimilarity of writing material used in the question document. Conduct further physical or chemical examinations such as folding endurance test, folding test, pursing test, sizing agents, writing instruments. Writing pen and inks also play a vital role in the identifying whether a document is fraud or genuine. Just like paper, they can also be used in tracing the age of the document. Writing materials are the manual devices used to make alphanumeric marks on paper or in a surface. The writing tool is usually controlled by movement of the fingers and wrists and arm the writer. Ink, a fluid, viscous marking material used for writing or printing. Pen, a tool of a tool for writing or drawing with a colored fluid, such as ink or writing instrument used to apply inks to paper is a pen. It came from the Latin word penna, meaning feather. Pen nibs, the toe division or points which from the writing portion of a pen are its nibs. Historical background. Reed pens, swamp reed, swamp reed. It came from especially selected waters grasses from in Egypt, Armenia, and along the shores of the Persian Gulf were prepared by leaving them under dung heaps for several months. It was the first writing tool that had the writing and slightly frayed, like a brush about 2000 years BC. This reed pen was used in Near East on papyrus and later on parchment. Quill pen. As the size of writing became smaller, both writing tools and surfaces changes volume or parchment books replaced the papyrus roll and the quick replaced the reed pen. Although quill pens can be made from the outer wing feather of any bird, those of goose, swan, crow, and later the turkey were prepared. The earliest reference 6th century AD to quill pens was made by the Spanish theologian Saint Isidore of Seville. And this tool was the principal writing implement for nearly 1300 years. To make a quill pen. To make a quill pen, a wing feather is first hardened by the heating or letting in the dry out gradually. The hardened quill pen is then cut to broad edge with a special pen knife. Steel point pens. Also by the 18th century paper had replaced vellum as the cheap writing surface and more writing was being done for commerce the crown. Although pens of bronze may have been known to Romans, the earliest mention of brazen pens was in 1465. The 16th century Spanish calligrapher Juan de Weishar. Fountain pens. A modern nib which contains a reservoir of ink in a specially designed chamber. After complete filling, the pen is capable of writing number of pages without refilling. In 1884, Lewis Waterman, a New York insurance agent, patented the first practical fountain pen containing its own ink reservoir. Waterman invented a mechanism that fed ink to the pen point by capillary action. Ballpoint pen. John Loud in 1888 patented the first ballpoint writing tool. A ballpoint pen has its point small rotating metal ball con- continually inks itself as it turns. The ball is set into tiny socket. Fiber tip pens. In 1963, fiber tip markers were introduced into the US market and have since challenged the ballpoint as the principal writing implement. Uh, the first practical fiber tip pen was invented by Yukio Hori of Japan in 1962. 1962. Felt tip markers are made of dense artificial fibers impregnated with a dye. These markers can be cut a variety of shapes and sizes, sum up to an inch in width. A modification of the ballpoint pen using liquid dye fed to a metal plastic ball was introduced in the US from Japan in 1973. Composition and characteristics of ink. Indian inks. The oldest form of Indian ink consisted of suspension of carbon black, soot or lamp black, in water to which glue or vegetable gum was added. Logwood inks. These inks which were used to extensively about a century ago have now because obsolete and are no longer manufactured. They were made from the aqueous extract of logwood chips and potassium chromate. Iron galatanite inks. This ink has been used as writing for over the 1,000 years. Fountain pen inks. These inks are regarded as a special fountain pen inks and consisting of ordinary iron galotanate inks with lower iron content in most cases but with a higher gestope content that normal inks. Gestop ink. These ink are composed of aqueous solution of synthetic geostop to which present preservative and flax are added. Water resistant writing and drawings. These inks are a special group of gestop ink. They consist of a pigment paste and a solution of a shellac made soluble in water by means of borax, liquid, ammonia, or ammonium bicarbonate. Sometimes the pigment suspension is combined with acid or basic gestop. Alkaline writing inks. These are quick dyeing inks which possess a pH of from 9 to 11, about 11. They penetrate quickly through the size of the paper, allowing the ink to penetrate quickly into paper. Ballpoint pen inks. The ballpoint pen inks did not appear on the European market before 1945. The development of the present pen was accomplished during World War II because the army and the air force needed a writing instrument which would not leak at high altitude and which supplied quick drying water resistant writing. Stamped inks. They are made with the acid substances such as glycerol, glycol, acetylene, alcohol, and water. Airline dyes are added as a coloring material. Coloring matter. Hectograph inks. These inks very much resemble stamp pad inks and are exclusively made with basic dyes. Typewriter ribbons inks. These inks are usually composed of a blend of aniline jes, carbon black, and soil such as olein or castor oil. Printing inks. Printing inks consists of a mixture of colored pigments, carbon black, and a base which may consist of oil, resins, synthetic resins, of a mixture of this. It is possible to remove printing ink from document by scrubbing the document with an aqueous solution of suitable detergent. Concealing inks. These inks often contain carbon, and this pack should be burned in mind when it is required to decipher paint cancellation marks on a postage stamp and wrapper. Script ink. These are manufactured by W.A. Chapter Pen Company since 1955. The inks contains the substance which is colorless in visible light and has a strong affinity for the fibers of the paper, and yet is not bleached by hypochlorite ink. Hypochlorite ink eradicators or wash out by soaking on water. The examination and identification of ink. The examination of ink often plays an important part in document examination. In these cases, the ink to be examined are not available in liquid form. One-of-kind examination centers on the question to the whether the ink of writing or alternation in a police blotter is identical with the ink found in the possession of the suspect. The chemical examination of ink. Chromatographic analytical methods. Thin layer chromatography, TLC. In the last 20 years, this ink analysis is the most common chemical ink testing. Determination of age of the ink. In the examination of question documents, the query of the age of writing sometimes arises. This may be the case when the question document is undated, or it is suspected that the date of the document is not purportedly what is written on the document. Typewriting identification. Typewriter, a machine that can reproduce printed characters on papers, or that can produce printed letters and figures on paper. Types of writers: conventional typewriters using type bars. Pick a type, 10 letter inch. Elite type, 12 letter inch. Number 3, 6 letter inch. Number 4, teletype machine. Number 5, 14 to 16 letter inch. Special typewriters. Important of terms. Alignment. Defects include characters which write improperly in the following respects. Alignment defect include character which write improperly in the following respects. Character. In connection with the typewriting identification, the term character is used to include letters, symbols, numericals, or points of punctuation. Clutch. Clutch typefaces. With use, the typefaces becomes filled with lint, dirty, and ink. Particularly in enclosed letters such as the OE, P, and G. Defects. The term defect describe any abnormality, maladjustment in a typewriter which is reflected in its works and which leads to its individualization or identification. Typeface defects. Any peculiarity of typewriting causes by actual damage to the typeface metal is known as the face defect. Identification and examination of typewritten question document. A. By Hagan in 1894. He write that all typewriter machines, even when using the same kind of type, become more or less peculiar by use as to the work done by them. This exposition of the principles of typewriting identification was allowed in 1919 by Ames. Between 1901 to 1907, Albert S. Osborne, the foremost document examiner of the early 20th century, defined the principles of typewriting identification used today. He called it the landmarks in typewriting identification. Identification of typewriter by the defects of the stroke. Each typewriter its own individual characteristics that enable one to differentiate that the type characters from a similar machine of the same make. Typewriter of the same make and model but different, each have different attribute to where the involved belong to the differences still apparent, although not as pronounced when new typewriters involved belong to the same series of manufacturers. What to consider? A typewriter coming out fresh from the factory has already some defects, which give its own personality. Whatever the quality of the manufacturer, a typewriter is never absolutely perfect. 2. Later, through faults of the typist and also by where the typewriter will acquire a stronger individuality by new defects which become more and more prominent and in time progressively overcome the initial ones. Typeface misalignments. Sino synonymous to alignment defects. 1. Vertical misalignment. A character printing above or below its proper position. Possible causes are characters soldered too high or too low on the type bar. Unsoldered character. A type bar having lost its correct curvature. A type bar having an oval of axis bearing. Misalignment of the type bar guide to the right or to the left. And disorder of the capital letter shift lock. Number 2. Lateral or horizontal misalignment. An alignment defect in which the character prints the right or left of its proper position is known as horizontal alignment. Oblique misalignment. Number 3. The character leans towards the right or towards the left.